when I started hanging out with Derek Fox, he's take on either he was taking me to Sound Factory or it was maybe right after. But he picked me up. This is when I lived in Staten Island. He picked me up in the car at the Staten Island ferry. It was him and Robert Owens in the back seat. I know. Fucking Robert Owens.
Friday, August 19th, 2022. Who are we speaking with?
Manny Ward.
Is that your real name or a stage name?
That's my real name. I kept my real name because all of my peers kept their real name. You know, none of the mixed master stuff. No, we all kept their real names, and so I was like, you know, I'm not gonna do that. I'll just stick with my name. I kind of like it. It kind of flows off the tongue, you know. So yeah.
What does Frankie Knuckles mean to you?
Everything. Absolutely everything. I mean, he took me under his wing. And through Frankie, I met everyone else who's inspired me, literally. So it was him first and foremost. It took me under his wing. And then through him, all of Def Mix, Morales, Satoshi, Romero, to Danny, to everyone. So Angel, because it just went from there. So he's everything. And I'm blessed enough to not just have him as a mentor. I don't consider him a friend. I consider him family. I mean, obviously he's no longer with us, but we were family, literally family. So whenever that name comes up, you know, I think that's the best word, everything. Yeah.
Tell us the story of how you met Frankie for the first time.
Awesome. I love this story. So I was in, most people know I was in the military. I just gotten out and I was a club head even before I went in. Knew about Junior, and I was going to Sound Factory that one time and I noticed he wasn't there.
Tell people who Junior is.
Junior Vasquez, I'm sorry. The Junior Vasquez of Sound Factory on 27th Street. But just to rewind, when I came back from the military, I noticed, no tea, no shade, but I was like, all these fantastic DJs are all of light color. Roman Ricardo, Junior Vasquez. And these were the guys that were blowing me away. I heard of Timmy, but I'd never seen him before. I've heard of Kenny, but I've never seen him. I've only heard him on the radio, so I didn't know. And Kenny Carpenter, that sounds white. Timmy Regisford, that sounds white. You know what I mean? So I'm like, wow, where all these black DJs at, you know? And I remember one night I go to Sound Factory, had no idea that Frankie was playing. I look up, oh my God, it's Black DJ, that's cool. And that was the very first time I heard Whistle Song too. That's when he was playing it on Real. So that was that weekend, went home. I'm going to dance tracks on same street that Frankie lived on, which was 3rd, I believe. 2nd or 3rd, he's 3rd. Same street as, you know, so dance tracks. Going to see, now I'm going to look for Work This Pussy white label, right? And now I was told dance tracks has it, go in there. But as I'm walking to dance tracks, I see these 2 people from across the street getting ready to cross over. One guy's really big, and I'm like, and then the other guy is a little bit smaller, but I'm like, you know what? I wouldn't fuck with these people. That's exactly what came in my head. I swear to God. I was like, you know, I wouldn't fuck with these people. So I go into the record store, and Joe Clausel, that was the first time I met him. He's playing a couple records, and he played the Whistle Song. I was like, oh, I want that record. Well, he's like, first of all, I'm playing it off a CD, cassette. It's not out yet. And he's the guy who did it right behind you. And I was like, oh my God, you're Frankie. And I said, I was just at Sound Factory. And Frankie was with Kevin Williams, who was the A&R for April Records. So I met Kevin and Frankie at the exact same time. Frankie and I started talking. He invited me to Sound Factory. I think he said he's back there in 2 weeks. Went up there, invited me up to the booth. It was just natural. And it was great. He treated me so well. And we we had a lot in common. I didn't know, but we went to high school, same high school, 10 years apart.
Which high school?
High School of Art and Design, so we had that in common. And I don't know, it just worked itself out. And again, we became friends. I mean, I knew who he was. And the thing is, I was finding out who he was the closer we got, but it was wild because he was a friend first. And then I started seeing who he really was, and yeah, that was the first time I met him. And that was in 89, I think. Yeah, I got out in 89. So it was in 89, maybe early 90, yeah, early 90, because I got out in December 89. So it's probably early 90 when we met. So yeah. So I met Frankie and Kevin Williams at the same time. So yeah.
Love that story. Let's go back to the beginning. Let's rewind a little bit. Where were you born and where did you grow up?
Born and raised in New York City, actually in Manhattan. Grew up first couple of
Where in
years.
Manhattan?
14th Street, St. Vincent's Hospital. Yeah. So I'm a native New Yorker to the heart. And then grew up in Staten Island. That was all of my preteen, college years, and moved out. Went into the military. I was in the clubs before I went into the military, but that was my problem. I was in college. I was going to more concerts and clubs than I was in school. So, I had to I was like, you got to do something, you know how that is. But yeah, native New Yorker to the heart, to the absolute heart.
What kind of music did you hear around the house growing up?
Oh, around the house. Actually, this is a really cool story. So my aunt is coming over tomorrow to visit. It was my aunt who really turned me on to music, because my mother would take me to my aunt's house in Harlem. No, I'm sorry, in the Bronx. And she would let me play her records. Her records were Vicki Sue Robinson, I'm Never Gonna Let You Go. She introduced me to LaBelle. I'm a LaBelle freak. I have a LaBelle tattoo. That's how much of a freak I am. She introduced me to Nightbirds. So I listened. That was mainly the stuff that I listened to. I still heard the Jackson 5 and stuff like that. But I was the odd one. I was the one who was into stuff like LaBelle and the more obscure groups at that time that, before I knew, were gay icons. So, but here's a really cool thing that I found out after my mom passed. My mom and my aunt went to the Paradise Garage.
Wow.
How about that? And my aunt went on a regular basis.
Wow.
So all that.
I need to interview her next.
Yes. Exactly.
When she comes over tonight,
Yeah, absolutely.
plant the seed, please.
Blew me away.
Wow.
Blew me away. And I was like, son of a gun. So not only did you turn me on to LaBelle, but you went to the Paradise Garage. So more than once. Wow. So, I'm a true believer that it is passed on somehow, some way. It's crazy, but it is, so yeah, the first music was that. It was all R&B and stuff. I wasn't really exposed to the rock part until I was, in college and maybe late high school, mainly. Yeah, late high school and college, Then I appreciate that.
What prompted the decision to join the military?
Music had nothing to do with it. I felt I had to do something because I was going to school in a place where I grew up, and I knew everywhere to go to not go to school. And I wasn't those type of kids that, played hooky. But if there was a concert and I went to the clubs not knowing DJs. We didn't know who the DJs were. We just knew who the clubs were. So it would be like 1018. We saw, I was 1018. I think I did the Copacabana a couple of times. There's a couple of other spaces I can't remember, but yeah, we were regular club heads. We were regular club heads at a young age. You know, we were getting in underage, but I guess because we had, you know, people who were letting us in saw that we were there to dance, to just get into the music, you know. So I never really had a problem with that. So that was always priority. So I had to kind of step back and say, okay, I gotta kind of do something, you know. I didn't want to become a computer programmer, which I thought at the time. So I changed that, and you know, I went into the military. I was like, you know, let me just buckle down for a couple of years and try and get on the right, you know, track. And again, I wasn't a bad kid. I wasn't drinking. I wasn't doing anything like that. I wasn't partying drugs wise. I was the clean person. I just never got home on time because I was in the clubs dancing, you know. So, but when I got into military, they forced me to becoming literally quote unquote professional DJ. And I say professionals because that's when they started paying me in the military.
Really?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
that's my next question. How did you get into DJing?
I did it as a hobby. My best friend on the block that I lived on, well, both places that I lived in Staten Island, I was always exposed to a turntable. I remember the first time I saw somebody playing a turntable, I'm looking like, oh my God. Like, of course, I've always had turntables in the house, but not two. I don't know about mixing. And the first time I saw that, I'm like, wow. And then that's when they were doing those parties out in the streets, you know, and like in they call them block parties or jams. And it just, I would stand there and just watch. And then I dance, you know. So I kind of knew that that was something that, you know, impressed me or intrigued me because I was always in charge of buying music for the house. You know, so I guess I was a DJ even back then before I knew it. You know, like there would be times when we were going to have company and my mother would send me to the record store. Go get a couple of 45s, you know. So
Wow.
it's really crazy when I actually think about it that I mean, I guess you consider I was a DJ even back then because she didn't tell me what to get, but she had trusted me enough for me to know that I was going to get the latest LaBelle or the latest Barry White or, you know, whatever was out at that time.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's kind of crazy when I think about it. So, but yeah, it started. So here's the thing. They sent me to Clovis, New Mexico. That is on the border of Texas and New Mexico. You had one town with one taxi cab and one school bus. So that was a major culture shock for me. And it was supposed to be what they call I forget the name of it, but a base that you're only supposed to stay there for a year. I wound up staying there my whole 3 years because they were having budget cuts. So to keep me sane, I had my best friend at the time, neighbor, send me my equipment. I had my own rate, my own room. So he would send me my equipment. I would set my equipment up. He would send me records every month that he would buy. And I would just play in my room. And word got out, and all my East Coast friends would come and hang out in the room. One of the DJs from the club, NCO club, was leaving. They said, hey, we hear you're a DJ. Would you play? I'm like, oh hell no. This is New Mexico. I'm not playing no fucking country for you or rock, you know. And they said, hey, we're going to pay you. And I'm kind of glad I did it because it was a great experience. It opened my ears to different types of music, you know. Uh, that's what turned me on to people like Supertramp and stuff like that, and Bruce Springsteen. That's when I realized, oh, there's some rock that's got some crazy grooves to it. So it taught me how to, you know, mix it. And that kind of helped because when I went back to New York, garage was still going and I understood the mixture now, like because Larry used to play everything and it was about how he weaved it in, how it made sense. So I was able to understand that, you know. But yeah, that was back in '88 when I officially started getting paid to DJ. So yeah, they convinced me. I said yes, and yeah. It's interesting.
Tell us about your first time at the Paradise Garage.
This is another favorite. So a very good college friend of mine who I actually consider, I consider my sister. Her name is Charlie. Um, and she actually, she was more of a club head than I was. All right. So she took me to the different places. So she took me to this place called Area, which later on turned to be the Shelter, and then Vinyl. So this is what we would do. Both lived in Staten Island. We would go to Chinatown, right? We would eat dinner. We'd go to Area. Then from Area, we would go to the Garage. She took me twice. She knew it was gonna be my first time, so she said, "Okay, we got you in." That was the first time I met Noelle because she knew Noelle, and she went somewhere because she knew a bunch of people, and she just said, "Okay, go hang out." Yeah. So it was still kind of in the beginning, but people were starting to come in. And I'm looking, I'm like, so this is a Garage. Okay. I believe Larry was playing. And one of the things that that kind of stuck in my head was I was like, oh, there's that guy that I used to go to high school with. And he's on a dance floor. He's moving. They're playing 7 Ways to Jack, right? And I'm watching him. And as it says, and I'm seeing him do I'm like, this is really cool. I get it. And then Larry threw on this song called Stand in Line by ESG, right? Which is kind of rock, but it has this drum fill in it. And I was standing next to it, like literally like right in front of the speaker. And that's when, certain times in the club when the DJ says, okay, we're going to go to the next level. And they bring up the volume. Well, he did that during the drum fill to the point where it literally pushed me on the dance floor. And that was like, now I see. Now I see what it's about. Now I understand. So that was the first time I went to the Garage. The second time was probably like maybe a couple of months later. And it was pretty much the same. Like that time I knew more people. It was a little bit later. I still didn't stay that late because I wasn't, I still think I got home like when it was daylight, but it wasn't like closing the Garage, But yeah, but you always the first time is the one that really sticks in your mind because that's when I got it. Like to this very day, when I play or if I hear Stand in Line by ESG, it takes me right back to that. It's one of those life altering experiences, so just twice, but hey, that was enough. That was enough to let me know why I'm on this earth. What was the purpose I was put on here for,
How did your career as a DJ develop?
Again, I gotta thank Frankie for that because, again, I've always bought music. I've always played. I was a club head though. I was the one on the dance floor. Although I knew I could do what I did, I didn't think I could do it as well as I heard other people. But when I got home from the military and I was listening, I was like, oh, I could do that, and it kind of worked itself out because my hubby right now, who I've been with since, Jesus, going on 30 years, his friend had a party and he told him, his name is Keith Copes, who every time I see him to this very day, I thank him. He was like, I know somebody who can do a party. I think you could, play. So Keith Copes gave me my first gig in New York City. I cannot remember the name of the place, but that night, it seems like all the right people were there. Like Rob Fernandez, Frankie was there, a couple other people were there. And this was after I met Frankie, so that was cool. And we were still hanging out. Frankie started his residency at Roxy, but I was just hanging out. We were part of the knuckleheads, as we called ourselves, and one night, Frankie's like, I got to go to the bathroom, throw on a couple of records. I was like, what? So I got to go to the bathroom, throw in a couple of records. You know what you're doing. But it's not like this was 10 in at night. This is like 12:30 when Roxy is packed. And Roxy, 10:18, big club, 3,000 people. So I'm like, oh, okay. He's like, just go. He looked at me like, just go and do it. And obviously, went really well. The mix was fine. I played like he let me play like maybe 4 records before he came back on. And from there on, I became his opener at Roxy. And then when Sound Factory Bar came, he brought me over, and I was his opener there until they opened up downstairs. And then I became the opener, but then I had my own room downstairs too. So I opened twice a night every week. And then by that time I was with 8Ball. So that built my career, because with my residency there and everybody going to see Frankie and then coming and filtering downstairs to see me, it just kind of grew. And that's how I met all these people between that and 8Ball, all these people in the industry that I still have relationships with. But that's how it started. Once again, that's why I say Frankie's everything, because he was there for the start of such a life-changing thing. And because of that, it took me all over the world. And like everybody, you have your peaks and valleys. Well, I'm looking up to where I have like my 3rd life or my 4th life, which is good, but yeah, that's how it started. It's him. It's definitely him.
Wow, great story.
Yeah.
Great story. What are the pros and cons of being an opener?
Well, in the beginning, you didn't realize what an opener was. At least I didn't know that you set the tone of the night. I just thought somebody had to be there until the main DJ gets there. But I learned, and here's something else, like Frankie never told me what to play. And they always say that too. He put you there for a reason. He never told me what to play. He never told me how or what or when to play it. He just gave me that room. I guess because he trusted in me. And what I didn't know sound-wise, if he didn't teach me, I had Phil Smith, who owned Sound Factory and Sound Factory Bar, or Steve Dash, who put the system in Sound Factory and Sound Factory Bar, and Twilo. So I guess they trusted me to know naturally what to do. And the only thing that I had a problem with being an opener was, for the longest, I was known as an opening DJ. So I always got booked as an opening DJ because I was an opening DJ for 7 years. What a lot of people didn't realize is, yeah, I was an opening DJ, but I wasn't opening downstairs. A lot of people did know, but a lot of people didn't. So it didn't take until I left Sound Factory Bar, like maybe a couple of years after, when I was booked to open for Danny at his BSL party. Now, they already knew in other places that I played that I can, play and bang as much as hard as the other ones. But New York, they were one of the last people to know that I was no longer just an opener. But that was it, because now, I would say within the past 10 years, people really have appreciated what openers do, because you literally do set the tone for the whole party. It's not about you playing the biggest, best bangers. It's about setting the mood. So when this DJ behind you comes, all he has to do is just continue it. He may take it left or he may take it right, but you did your job, because that dance floor is full. They're up there sweating and screaming already. So it's not like you have to work to get this crowd up at 1 or 2 in the morning when they should have already been worked up or feeling like, okay, we're in the right spot. I'm not bored or it's too loud. I just got here. I can't, why is he playing this? So I think I was a natural opener because I like my mellow shit too. I really love my mellow stuff. When I worked at 8 Ball, I sold just as much mellow shit as I sold as the hard stuff. I'll play a Jamiroquai track in a heartbeat. I'll play a soulful track like that in a heartbeat at any given time if it's the right time. So because of that, you have more of that range to just bring it up and present it. So. But that was the only downfall. But now I wear that with a badge of honor. With and people who understand totally understand. Like my good friend Rissa, we were just talking about that the other day. An opener is an art. That is an art that not everybody can do, So yeah.
I love that story. So many questions. Tell us about your first time at Sound Factory.
Right.
And then tell people before that, what is a Sound Factory? What was a Sound Factory?
So remember I told you Frankie was everything to me? Well, the Sound Factory was everything to me. Again, going back to the military, the first couple of places that I went, it was the Tunnel, Roma Ricardo. Maybe went a couple other places. Met up with a friend of mine. I forget where we met. His name is Derek Fox. He's also a DJ, a legend as well. He was an amazing dancer, everything else. But we talked about it. Actually, here's a really cool story that not a lot of people know. When I started hanging out with Derek Fox, he's either he was taking me to Sound Factory or it was maybe right after. But he picked me up. This is when I lived in Staten Island. He picked me up in the car at the Staten Island ferry. It was him and Robert Owens in the back seat. I know. Fucking Robert Owens. Wow. I was like, oh, okay.
That song was everything at that time.
Okay. Oh, yes. Yes. He's like, this is the guy who sings I'll Be Your Friend. What? Hey, Robert. And what's going on? It was amazing. But yeah, he took me and we get to the front and, it's just warehouse, 27. I'm like, okay, there's a club here. And I do believe that when they designed Sound Factory, it kind of had the Paradise Garage in mind because I'm walking in there and there's this long walkway down, not up like the garage, but down. And as I'm getting closer, I'm hearing Todd Terry's Bango, 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 Bango. I'm like, oh shit, I love that song, right? And as I get closer and I see this big room, that sound just like people losing their shit. And the bang, bang, bang. And I look up and I see this bald-head white guy. I was like, oh shit. And that was just like all she wrote for me. That was all she wrote. Because that was the first time, because I heard Junior there before I heard Frankie there. And that was a time when oh my God, let me tell you, Junior in the early 90s and late 80s was fucking untouchable. And I remember telling him that too, because he did what he wanted to, how he wanted to. He was one of those people who would play full 9-minute version of Heartbeat at 3 a.m. when it's packed, and he would stop the music from here and then go down to 98 beats per minute and have the fucking crowd losing it. So that was like, okay, I'm home. I am home. And then, through Derek and a couple other people, I just started meeting people in the crowd. I was always dancing. Always dancing. yeah, so I mean, it was my garage. It's a funny story. I was in the National Guard at that time. I would go to Sound Factory every weekend except one weekend a month. And the only reason why I didn't go that one weekend, not because I was in the National Guard, it's because I would I would take a break and go to the shelter.
Mhm.
You know, because as much as I love Junior and Junior killed it, there's nobody who would play the songs that I thought I was the only one who would listen to in a club like Timmy.
Tell people what the shelter experience is.
Oh. Shelter experience to me was so Junior was a club experience. Shelter to me was like church for me, but it was also like, I don't want to say a walk down memory lane, but yeah, because he played the shit that my aunt would let me play on her record player in the Bronx when I would go visit her. You know, so for me to hear "What Can I Do for You" on a big system and see people lose their shit, and I'm like, but I used to listen to this in my aunt's house, and to make that connection and see that, you know, it was a biblical experience. Whereas Junior, he gave me songs like Sweat and you know, so we had that Motherland and all, so that's that. But Timmy gave me that. It was that spiritual not even throwback, because it wasn't that throwback at that time. It was still classic at the time, but I would never thought I would hear LaBelle in a club.
Mm.
LaBelle, you know,
And the way he would play it too was just different.
nobody played it like Timmy. And that he was the first one who made me understand crossovers and highs and bass and this and that. It was him, and then it was Morales and Vega. So now Frankie did too, but Frankie was sneaky with that. Like Frankie, if you would ever see his fingers, he'd constantly be touching those buttons. And before you knew it, you would hear these highs come across like that. It wasn't boom, it was just like, what the fuck did you just do? You know? Um, but yeah, Timmy was the one who really kind of started making me realize how important knowing a song is and how to work it. Again, another example, when I heard Stevie Wonder's Another Star for the first time in a club, it was there at Timmy's, and I cried. I literally fucking cried. I cried on that dance floor. You know?
Mm.
So yeah. So yeah. Both of those were just extremely just hard to explain, but yeah, they were, it was like the spiritual biblical thing, and the other one was just, I mean, they both were just so incredible and hard to, well, not hard to differentiate, because, you know, again, one was like bringing me I guess my past, my soul, my, where the other one is new shit that's grasping my soul, and it was like two worlds collided, you know.
Mhm.
That was my experience with that, the Sound Factory.
Compare and contrast opening for Frankie at Roxy and Sound Factory versus opening for Tenaglia at Be Yourself.
I was in two different places. Because so when I first met Danny, it was at Sound Factory Bar. We had that whole deep thing, and he was another person. Once we met, it was automatic. He was probably the second person that I met in the industry that we just right away. And you know, I met him. Surrender Yourself came out in '92, so I met him in '92. He walked in the booth and he says, "Hi," and I'm like, "Hi, how's it going?" This was downstairs, and he told me his name. He said, "I did that song, Surrender Yourself," and I go like this, and I was like, "This is you," like, "This is me," and then that was it, you know. Be Yourself, by that time, I was already more established. I had records out by that time. I was I had my residency at Stereo, so I was already established. But Danny and I, when it came down to the more harder, I'm not gonna say energetic, but that sort of vibe, we were so in tune with it. Like I loved his productions, still do. But back then, like the shares and the orbs, and I mean, I can just go down, like everything was just so lush, but it was so hard and soul. That's exactly what he was.
Mm.
So when the opportunity for me came to open, first of all, I was like, hey, I'm opening for Danny, but I didn't even look at it as an opening for Danny. But I didn't even look at it and also by that time I was a little bit more confident in what I did, and it took me a long time to get there. So I didn't look at it as an opener. I looked at it as I am part of the Be Yourself family now. I'm part of the Be Yourself residency, because yeah, I would start, but when Danny used to play all night, one of my favorite times of the night was the early part because the shit that he would pull out and the way he would play it, like Timmy and Larry and Morales and them, he would kill it, so that just gave me a chance to kind of do that. So I never looked at it as open. I looked at it as playing with. And another thing is people would come early,
Mm.
when
Mm.
people would come early, so it wasn't about like, oh, he's opening, so let's get there, let's get the last half hour to say. No, I've had people come within the first half hour, and like the people would be there and go from there. So even though it was opening, it didn't seem like opening. It just seemed like this is the first half of the night, or this is the first quarter of the night, and then Danny's gonna come on. So, but the experience, I mean, we are so close in the our twisted humor and all that other stuff. So there, I didn't even look at it on the professional way. Of course, it was professional, but it was just fun and family and friends to me. And I would learn along the line. Like I would learn through music, and there would be really cool times like after I would play and he's playing something, we'd have this connection, like I know this record's gonna work for him, and he played a record in the eyes with me. But not just Frankie, I mean, not just Danny. Frankie did that for me. A couple other people who know me know how to get my goat in a good way, know how to like send me through the roof. So we've always had that too. So it's yeah, the I think it was more of a comfort when I was with Danny and within myself. Whereas with Frankie, I felt comfortable with him, but I knew I was still growing and I was still learning, you know. It was really interesting because I never really thought of it that way. Like, what was the difference between Frankie and Danny? So I never really thought of it until you just asked me. And yeah, that's really it. There was this comfort level and learning on both sides, but I was a little bit more, I knew who I was a little bit more when I was playing with Danny versus I was still growing when I was playing with Frankie. So yeah.
What is the Winter Music Conference?
Ah. Another life altering experience. So first of all, Winter Music Conference was always amazing for me. We did it all the time. The first time I went was through 8-Ball Records. Because of 8-Ball Records, I got a chance to do all those great, amazing things. It was the first time. Obviously, it was the first time I played in Miami. I got a chance. Now, luckily, the cool thing with Winter Music Conference is I was already working for 8 Ball for a while. So when I went to Winter Music Conference, I had pretty much known everybody that I wanted to know, except the very, very small few. And there I got a chance to meet them. So like those dreams were met. And I knew who they were because of, dealing with their music and records and stuff like that. Case in point, Michael Watford, uh, Felix the House Cat. And that's where I finally got to meet my other hero, DJ Pierre. Right. So, but I was lucky enough to know pretty much everyone else, thank God, because of my position in the record store and the industry and DJ. But another life altering thing that happened was my re-entry into production. My first part was with 8 Ball, but then I was done with 8 Ball, and then I got my own equipment, and I did this track, which is now known as Crash Tribe. This was after a night at BSL where Danny just really inspired the shit out of me, and I did this track, and then Danny and I have this thing with Tina Marie, which is a long story. I can tell you that one. But he did something with Tina Marie on his album, Detour. And I took a sample from it and put that to Crash Tribe. So anyway, that went over well. But this is all getting to where my point. One of the most incredible experiences I'd ever had was Danny was doing Space. This is like maybe the second or third time he did Space. Place is jam packed. Everybody in the industry is there. He stops the music. He goes on the microphone. He's like, this record I'm playing, I had no idea he was going to do this. Some good friend of mine, Manny Waters, called Crash Tribe. Check it out. Played it from beginning to end. I'm like, oh my God. Like, I couldn't believe it. Like, it is to this day, I still can't believe. Like, so that is one of the main things that pop out of Winter Music Conference. But I've had so many amazing memories through Def Mix, through Danny, through Victor, through just so many. Master Work used to have the crazy. Winter Music Conference was a shit. It really, really was. It was something we would look forward to, but then it started to fall off once they started combining those big, I think it was like the Ultra Festival. Then things started watering down, and if you had more money at the door, you would get in before the people with the badge. So we kind of backed out. But before that, I've went to music conference. Was just amazing, absolutely amazing.
Talk to us about navigating the Winter Music Conference with Frankie Knuckles. What was that like?
It was always great. I mean, I was always at the Def Mix thing. Always was, obviously, because it was literally family thing. So I was always, with Judy. I wouldn't go there with them, but I would usually like be with them throughout the night, or there's one or two parties where I was there the whole time with Frank and kind of like unofficially was, assisting. But that all just came naturally.
I'm specifically recalling an anecdote you once shared about being Frankie's friend. You didn't realize his celebrity.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's
this. Yeah. So I forget where this place was. This is the first time that Def Mix did this party at this particular spot. I want to say it might have been on Lincoln Road. I don't know, but it was normal. It was like Hector, David, Frankie, and Satoshi, and we were sitting in the back place where the DJs and then the VIP stuff, like normal. It's myself, Ted, Patterson, Honey might have even been there, bunch of us. And, so you had to kind of cross this way to go to the booth. So out of the section, cross this way to go to the booth. This was roped off, right? So it's us here, it's cross this way, and then the booth. Morale's in the booth. So Frankie's getting ready to walk over. So Frankie's like, walk me over. I'm walking over, And you can't see the people from this, beyond the people, at whatever rope is that they can't get through. They were like grabbing Frankie, they're trying to, and I'm like, I looked at that and I looked at Frankie. I'm like, it's like, man, I go through this all the time. I was like, this is like watching the Jackson 5, like when they came to America. It blew me away, like how they were literally like lunging and trying to grab it. And I'm literally like, whoa. And I'm like, so that's when it really, really hit how big of a star he was, because he never talked about it. He never told you that. He never said, I went this one, all these thousands. And that wasn't him. And I'll never forget that. I was like, Frankie, I said, I had no fucking idea. He's like, this is what I have to go through. I was like, wow. And that's when it hit me. Like, oh my God. Like, that's when I really said, I am friends with a fucking worldwide celebrity. Like, wow. That's when I might have gotten a little starstruck, only because I realized at that time, like, what position I'm in, like, holy shit. So yeah. And then from there on, I've seen it plenty of times, like when we were in Amsterdam and stuff, I got a chance to see stuff. I hope we didn't freeze. Did we freeze?
You're okay. You're back. You're back.
Yeah. So yeah, I've seen it plenty of times after that, but that was the first time, and it was just mind blowing. And we giggled about it. We giggled a lot about it, So
I want you to teach us some things. You were a buyer for 8Ball Records. Tell us about what a buyer is, what makes a successful buyer, and what common mistakes buyers make.
That's really good. Well, I'm going to tell us what kept us kind of in the top. So there was 8Ball, there was Dance Tracks, there was Vinyl Mania, and maybe Downtown Records. And Satellite. I'm sorry, I can't forget Satellite. I think not only do you have to have the good ear, not only do you have to have your ear to the ground, meaning, in my opinion, you can't be a record buyer if you are not in the clubs, if you are not a DJ, if you are not a producer, in my opinion. Because you know what's fresh, you know what's new, you're feeding off of that, and being out there, seeing what's working and what's not, right? But also what worked for us, having that certain relationship with the buyers. I mean, with the people that you're buying from. Because what they're going to know is they're going to say, okay, 8Ball kind of goes for this sort of stuff. If you have a relationship with these people where you get records from, and not just a regular, but if you make personal visits, personal phone calls, they realize what you're going for. They will call you and say, hey, we got this amount only for the States. Do you want to be the ones to have it? It's happened quite a few times. Not only just like for like a couple of import places that we dealt with in Long Island. We would drive every week. John Creamer and I would drive from New York City to Long Island, go to the warehouse and go through records. They would say, this is what came, this is what we think you'll like, and we would get first dibs. Wow. It takes a relationship like that to put you a little bit above the average record store, and the same thing with those other record stores that I mentioned. They had specific relationships. Plus, you had Joe Clausel for the buyer for Dance Tracks. Really can't go bad with that. You really can't go wrong with him. Myself and John Creamer, and Carlos Sanchez, we were buyers for 8Ball.
Yes, that's
Yes,
I forgot
yes,
about that.
yeah. I forget who was oh shit, I just connected with a friend of mine who was one of the buyers for satellite. I forget his name, but same thing. And then what we did also was, which was smart as far as like Alex Kaplan, when techno was really big and he knew we were house heads, he was like, okay, you guys stick with that. I'm going to get DB, one of the biggest techno DJs around in New York City, hire him as one of the techno buyers. You know,
Mhm.
that's what makes a good record store and made it what made us us and what made all those other record stores. And who the thing is, it was a good competition too. It was a friendly competition because there was
Mhm.
times when we would come to Long Island and we'd see the guys from Satellite or wherever. Hey, what's going on? Blah, blah, blah. You
Mhm.
know,
Mhm.
but April always had their certain things. Satellite always had their certain things. Dance tracks always had their certain things. Hence why I went to dance track to get the white label of Work This Pussy because they had the very first dibs. They were the only ones in all of New York City that was carrying it, you know? So
Mhm.
there you go. I think that's the biggest secret to making a good buyer and stuff like that.
Given your experience in the industry and the people that you've been around, you've learned two very important lessons: how to work a system and how to sound check a room.
Mhm.
Explain both.
Trust your ears as far as sound checking them. I used to think there had to be a certain thing that you had to listen to or you had to hear. And I'll tell you why, because I've learned sound from three people. Frankie, um, Phil Smith, and Angel Moraes. Now, Angel Moraes had this ear that I don't know how he could hear something way across the room while having a conversation with you and doing something else. But he had this God-given ear thing. I thought that you had to hear as good as that. Not necessarily. That you have to do when you're building a system. I don't have that. I don't think I ever will. But you got to trust what sounds right for you. And if you're around it enough, if you're around good sound enough, then you know what sounds right. And you know what it takes to get there. Um, so that's one thing. And then Frankie, I mean, when I first started working with Frankie, he would walk me around the room and says, go out there and do a sound check. Walk around the room. You know, you don't have to go behind the speaker and go up and down. No, walk around the room, find out where it sounds. How does it sound? Is something missing? Is something there? Something too high? Something too low? That's the sound check. Do that. Make sure it's there. Now, working a system, that's I'm going to say right place, right time with that because Sound Factory Bar, when they switched the system from analog to digital, it was Steve Dash who did it, who was the sound man of New York's, of all of the East Coast. So we were the very first ones in all of New York, even before Sound Factory, to have that system, which meant 3 and a 5-way crossover. So I was there the very beginning. So that literally came natural because I was constantly around it. And that's why I'm going to jump forward to stereo. When I finally started working at stereo, Angel was like, a lot of people are scared of the system. You're not, because you are from Sound Factory Bar. And he said, I knew that because you were there. I know what you can do, which is true. When I got to stereo, it was like I was at home. And I was like, um, but yeah, that comes with experience. And that's all. I've been so lucky to be in those places at that time and be able to learn it and work on them. I mean, not everybody was fortunate enough to do that. I mean, the people who were able to touch that sound system when it first came out, count on one hand. It was Louis Vega, it was David DePino, it was myself, Lord G, Frankie, and I. So, and then Morales came in later. Those are only ones for a long time because it was only in Sound Factory Bar. You know, so, and I just took that with me, you know, so.
Tell us about your residency at Stereo. What's it like to play for 8 hours? How do you plan the night?
I mean, for me, it was not so much planning the night. It was like I knew what I was going to play. The longest I played at Stereo was 11 hours, and that was fine. That was all vinyl because that was before we were going to we were doing CDs, but it was all vinyl. You can't really plan in Stereo. You really can't, because there's no other place like it. There's no other audience like Stereo. They know their shit. They appreciate, they eat it up. They eat it up. So if you're not, you're probably going to say, I'm going to play this at this particular time. Well, this is what happened to me a couple of times. And I've seen Morales do it. So many of them do, especially Morales, David, Danny, and them. If a record goes over really big, you have 7, 8 more hours to possibly play that again and again and again. To be able to do that and have the freedom to do something like that, because you see the crowd, or you can say, these people, this is their first time hearing it. I don't think they got it quite yet. I'm going to give it to them a little bit more later on. Apparently Larry did that with this song called E2, E4. This I've heard this from a couple of people. When he first played it, nobody. Second time he played it, maybe an hour or so more. I think like maybe by the 7th time, people losing their fucking shit. I've done that with a couple of tracks in Stereo. Stereo, you have the ultimate freedom. The crowd inspires you as a DJ. For a crowd to inspire a DJ, that's saying something. Because normally the DJ is supposed to be inspiring the crowd and educating the crowd. You're going to go to a place where the crowd inspires you to play your ultimate best. It's amazing. And I think I had my residency there from 2000 to maybe 2000 to 2011, 2012. So I've had a really good run there, a really good run. And yeah, to this day, definitely the best room I've ever played. But that means everything. That means the crowd, that means the length of time, that means just everything. You know, to this day, I haven't done an 11-hour set since. But how many times do you get a chance to do something like that? You don't anymore. That's unheard of. Absolutely unheard of. But they, you know, maybe 1 or 2 clubs still do that. Maybe Bergheim, I'm not sure. But yeah, so.
That leads me into my next question. DJ residencies, are they extinct like dinosaurs?
Unfortunately, nowadays a residency is a monthly, and that's still rare, super rare. You know, my days of residency was every week. Before then, people like Danny and David and them played 3 times a week. David, I'm sorry, Danny Cribbett, I think he had this interview where he played like 3 or 4 times a week, you know, in a little club. That was a residency. That was a job back then. But yeah, I think their residencies today are totally different meaning than what it used to be. You can say I have a residency at this place I play at every so often at in Brooklyn called Home. I can say I have a residency there because I'm pretty much a regular, but that's not a residency of yesteryear. You know, from 91 to 2008, I played every week because I had a residency every week, sometimes twice a week. So that's a residency, but then you know what really did it? Once I started seeing turntables on commercials, I was like, we're fucked. Once I think like I saw a turntable DJ on a Gap commercial, I was like, it's over. It's fucking over. We are fucked now. Because now it's the popular thing. So now everybody and their mother wants to do it. Then the prices go down. Well, we're not going to pay your fee. We're going to pay this little person who wants to be a DJ and they'll pay for nothing.
Yeah.
So I was like, shit. But I've also learned if it's in you, if you have that talent's never going to leave you. And it's going to eventually come back up, eventually resurface for somebody who's got like that ear that they want to hear, somebody who knows what the hell they're doing, somebody who's got that range and stuff. So
are you still a full-time DJ or do you have a day job?
I have a day job. Things were good for a good minute, and I still, I didn't want to be the only one not bringing in a regular, only one in the household, not bringing in a regular check. And plus I'm getting older. You don't really have health insurance as a DJ. I wanted to look at some realistic stuff. But what I did was I decided to get a job that I can do both. I'm not trying to do something, and when I mean that, I mean, not in the music business. If I could, I would probably have a full-time job in the studio. And I actually have a certificate for that. I am a recording engineer. I have a recording engineer certificate. But since these computers came out and stuff, you really can't get a real job in the studio because there's no studios. And yeah, I would do that. I would love to do that. I would love to get like a full-time, or job in the studio, but most of us can't do that right now. It's just, unless you're the real big ones that you mentioned earlier. But no, what I'm doing now is perfect because it's a good job. It's what I do. I work really well with people. And it gives me the freedom to still do my production, my DJing, so, that was the thing, to find the right sort of job that still allowed me to be who I was put on this earth to be. Because trust and believe, I would not do a job that would keep me from doing what I do. There's no way now. No. Because then I'm not living. So
talk to us about vinyl versus digital. Has that been good for house music or not?
I would say with the digital, there's just so much more to choose from. So, there's a lot of people say there's not good music out there. Well, actually there is. The problem is there's just so much. You have to be online every day to find some, to get all this good music. There's a lot of shit out there. Not as much as it used to be, though. I have to say, music has gotten better, at least in my opinion. But with vinyl, it was easier to track down. They weren't putting that much out. And if you want to go to the whole sound quality thing, well, back in the analog days, vinyl was a thing. But they are doing things now to whereas they're converting their systems so that if you play a good quality digital, you're going to get some good sound. You're going to get some good quality bottom, mid-range, stuff like that. None of those highs that's going to pierce right through your ears. So the sound quality has definitely gotten better. And I don't want to be that sort of person that says, well, back in my day, or you could never top analog. Yeah, you can say that, but there's really no point in doing that because we are constantly advancing to make the sound as good as possible. And there's some places out there that sound amazing. Now, I would say that if there were clubs out there that all sounded like shit, then I'd be like, oh, we need to get back to the analog. We really do. But that's not the case. I love it both. I'm not gonna lie, I miss seeing the vinyl. I miss that. I miss the touch. I miss, seeing where the breaks are, and but you can't loop vinyl unless you have a jam man or something like that. So they both had their pros and cons. It's about just staying relevant with what's new, but keeping true to where it all came from. So if you're gonna try your best to get your digital sounding as good as vinyl, then by all means, I'm not gonna be mad at that at all. So.
Comment on the recent debate of Drake and Beyonce exploring house music.
Yeah. Okay, so I will say this. Now, as far as Drake, he's always had that dance thing behind him. He's Canadian. Those Canadians, they do love their dance music, and I appreciate that by far. And Drake has this dance vibe. He's always had a dance vibe about him anyway. So I'm not hating him on that. And I love Black Coffee. I've heard some stuff that he's done. I do like it. And Beyonce, I absolutely love what she did. This is the only thing. These younger writers, these people who have not really been or know much about the beginning are saying that Drake and Beyonce brought house back. No, they didn't bring house back. House has always been here. How are they going to bring house back, especially Drake, when he's going to go to Black Coffee? Black Coffee's been doing house. Drake was like, I like what he's doing. Let's combine. Right. So, and I'm not saying Drake, and I'm sure they're not saying that they did it, but there's these young writers who are saying they brought house back. Not the case. And also, you can't say that Drake brought Black Coffee's name to the forefront, because Drake had already won his Grammy. So that's done. What I think Drake did was, I want to combine with you, collaborate. I like where it came. Boom. Now all these young writers like, oh, Drake brought back house. And Drake and Beyonce. Now, this is what I'm going to give Beyonce props for. She didn't bring back house, but what she did is she took all of these producers, some of them that were just under the radar, or some of them that decided, I'm not even going to do another track, or I'm just not interested, and now gave them a payday. That means the fucking world. That I bow to her for that. Because there are people who pretty much retired. You don't hear, haven't done a production in years, 10 years. All of a sudden, she samples that person, she gives that person a name, and now that name, that person, whom at least 3 or 4 of them that I know, all are amazing fucking people, amazing. So they all deserve it and more. So that's what really got to me. So I'm going to say, no, she didn't create house, but she gave these people a platform. And Kevin Avian said it. He feels now that he's been heard. Dude, like, how amazing is that? Like, now some of my peers are going to be getting paid for something that they did from the heart, right? That was out on this little label, and now they're going to get paid. I can't tell you how I feel like it's happened to me. I really do. I feel like it happened to me. So yeah, that's a great subject. And I love that subject. And just to add to this whole thing with Khalees, which she had a valid argument until she realized, okay, it wasn't Beyonce, it was Pharrell, right?
Mhm.
What I felt she should, because again, she had the valid argument. And when she went back on, I guess the second and third time, she kind of explained, but she didn't apologize for going so in the way she did on Beyonce. That was a mistake on her part. Because, hey, we're all human. And I would have been emotional too. I'm still getting kind of screwed over from 8Ball, but it is what it is, you know? At least my name is still out there. But I'm not going to go on there and say this person's shit, blah, 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 and this. Or if I do that and I find out that it wasn't, then I'm going to be like, okay, here's my point, but I got to say, I kind of jumped the gun with this. So Beyonce, I apologize. Let me reel that back. All this should be towards Pharrell. Well, she didn't do that. Why didn't she do that? This is supposed to be a sisterhood, like you said in the beginning. You know, you know, so you should have just followed through, because Beyonce did the best thing ever. Okay, I'm just gonna pull your sample because you just drug me through the mud. Meanwhile, I am pulling all these other people out and giving them props. She even gave Tina Marie props. So, like, come on. Why would she single you out? Because of Pharrell, not because of you. She didn't even know. So that's what, anyway, that's my thing with that. My thing, and I tell everybody this, and I got this from Frankie. This is one of the main things from Frankie and Danny, I would say. Stay humble. I don't care how big you get. Stay humble. You know, you don't need to walk around with a chip on your shoulder, or I'm better than this person. Everybody's got their place in this crazy thing called house. Everybody's got their place. Not everybody's going to be as big as Morales and Louis, but we all have our place and we all fit in perfectly. And most of us, majority of us, we support and love each other. We lift each other up. You know, we're not trying to step on you to get to where I'm going. Hell no. Because, dude, you lifted me up. You know, it's because of you why I'm here. I'm not trying to step over you and, you know, it's not about that, you know. So, but yeah. You know, I appreciate both Beyonce and Drake for doing that. But I'm going to go back even more, back to the 90s. Mariah did that for us. CeCe Peniston did that for us. Seal did that for us. I can go down the line. Lisa did that for us. You know? So Madonna did that for us. So, you know, it'll make me start going down that line now, because I'll do it.
So have me read you, because I will.
You know? Exactly. So, you know, that just kind of proves my point that, you know, it has been around, and big artists do support what we do. And there are artists that appreciate and see our worth. You know, it's happened before. I'm just kind of glad it's coming back around. But it's still, if you think about it, it's still not as big as it was back in the 90s, because, you know, because of Def Mix, Vega, Danny, and all those people, and Peter, and I mean, I can just go down the line, all these people remixing these giant artists, and not just remixing them, but having these giant artists come and sing over house tracks. We've had that support. We did have that support. So I'm just glad that it's coming back, and maybe it'll grow with people like Drake and Beyonce. Maybe it'll just keep growing, kind of like it was in the 90s. We'll see. I can only hope. Well, we got people like Ultra, who's killing it, who has been doing it ever since. So, you know.
And with that, we'll leave it there. Thank you so much for the fantastic interview. Awesome. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful evening.
You do the same. All right. Bye-bye.